Each week, I send out a free email newsletter. And in that newsletter, I will teach you a little bit about my approach to the market for trading and investing. But I also feature a few stock picks, one, two, sometimes three. For example, last week, I featured two stocks, FDMT and Open. You can go to the Stockscores website and look at those charts, but here we can see the performance from Monday's close to Friday's close. Open up 37% and FDMT up 36%. Now it's important to recognize that not all of my trades work. You have to do your own diligence, be comfortable with the risk, recognize that trading the market is risky, and you should be comfortable with that. With that said, if you want to register for this newsletter, just go to my website, stockscores.com, and there's two places to do so. You can either register right here from this link where you can set up a free Stockscores account, or you can go to the Stockscores analysis menu, scroll down to free weekly newsletter, and just enter your email address right here. I don't send out spam or sell my lists. It's just a way for me to start to teach you about the market. And there you can see last week's FDMT and Open were the picks. And you go back and look at some of the historical movers. For example, I featured NVIDIA back in April. It's done great. We can take a look at this SLDP, which I featured a couple of months ago, and it too has done really, really well. But of course, there's some that haven't. For example, GPRO, I featured, it hasn't really gone down, but it hasn't gone up much. So again, go to stockscores.com, Stockscores analysis, free weekly newsletter, and you can register right there. All right, let's get into this week's analysis of the markets. And as always, we'll start with the S&P 500. And I'm going to just punch in SPY here. And we can see that the S&P is in a nice upward trend. We managed to get to new highs. I was a little concerned with that breakdown, but it didn't materialize into more weakness. So the buyers have held fast and we're back into a bullish market condition. You can see the sentiment stock score is very strong. Anything above 60 is bullish. And so the S&P looks good. Let's take a look at the NASDAQ 100. QQQ is the symbol. And very similar chart, hitting new highs, upward trend after a little blip a couple of weeks ago. Now, we'll move our attention to the small cap market, and this is IWM. And it too had a little break of the upward trend from this, falling top from these previous highs. I was a little concerned about that, but we've managed to surge higher. The market's starting to speculate that maybe interest rates will go down soon, and that of course is quite positive for the small cap market. Let's take a look at the Canadian market. T.XIU is the symbol. And there you can see nice upward trend. If we go to the short-term chart, it's also a good upward trend with this little blip that, obviously we were a little nervous about with trade talks and tariffs and that sort of thing, but the market shrugged it off very quickly and we are back in that bullish market. Now let's take a look at gold, which is one of the reasons the Canadian market has done well. Now it's been in a long-term upward trend, but the last 3 or 4 months it's been in this pattern. This is called an ascending triangle. The volatility is compressing, and if it can break out through that level, then we're back into a bullish condition. But right now it's sort of in a holding pattern, having made some really strong gains. Now I'll take a look at silver as well, because I know many of you are bullish on silver, and it's done fairly well. It's outperformed gold over the last 3 months. If you look at that long-term chart, it's really playing catch up to gold, because of course gold did quite well over the last 2 years, and now silver is working to catch up. Let's take a look at the oil market. USO is one of the ETFs that represents oil. What you can see is a lot of volatility, and that volatility means investors are uncertain about oil. If we go to the 3-year weekly, as I've said for the last many months, we are in this sideways trading range with resistance up here. When we get up to that resistance, we get stuck. When we fall to support, we bounce. And we're kind of in the middle of the range right now, so it's relatively a neutral market. Moving along, let's take a look at the currencies. We'll take a look at the US dollar first. That's UUP. It has managed to break the downward trend on the daily, starting to build rising bottoms. I wouldn't say it's a bullish chart yet. You can see the sentiment stock score quite neutral. But if we start to see this sentiment stock score move up, that's the green line, which is based on pattern recognition, If we start to see that moving up, moving through resistance, then we will have a better chart for the US dollar. Let's take a look at Bitcoin, which of course has been much stronger than the US dollar. It continues to be in that upward trend, but a little light or a little slow the last 4 or 5 weeks there. Long-term trend is up, but short-term we're kind of sideways. And finally, let's take a look at the bond market, which really is important for those small cap stocks. I'm going to look at the 3-year chart, and you can see that generally we have falling tops towards support. Now that support is important because we see every time it gets there, it tends to bounce. If we were to break down through that floor, it implies that interest rates are going up. So if this goes down, the bond market goes down, interest rates going up. Now for the last 3 months, we've been sideways. It's a relatively neutral chart until we break down through that floor. If we break up through that line of resistance, then we have a more bullish market condition. So looking at my ratings then, I've upped it back to bullish on US large cap and NASDAQ. Short-term bullish for the small caps, but still long-term neutral. Canadian stocks bullish on both timeframes, gold neutral on both timeframes, oil short-term bearish, but longer-term neutral. US dollar neutral on both timeframes, short-term neutral on Bitcoin, but bullish long-term, and bonds neutral on both timeframes. All right, let's get into the trade of the week. This is another thing that I try to talk about to educate each week. You will see my indicators applied to a day trade from the week, and this week we had a monster mover in a stock with the symbol BSLK, and you can see it here on screen. The move started early in the day, actually started pre-market and even the previous day to this, but the big story here was the move from market open somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 hitting $17.55 within the same day. Now, how do we read these indicators? Well, anywhere you see a pink and yellow dot, that is called an action candle. Now you can see that there's lots of action candles on this chart. The ones that matter are the ones that break a line of resistance from low volatility. So anywhere that I can draw a line across these inflection points and then we get a breakthrough resistance, that is a good opportunity. So here we have a horizontal line of resistance for that move, which over the course of 5 or 6 minutes went from $6 to almost $9. That's nearly a 50% move there. Then we had this break of a pullback, which was around $7.50, and that surged to $15. We had another break right here, which was a break of this little trend line with an action candle and a big move. So the point in showing you this is that these action candles, combined with pattern recognition that I teach in the different courses that we do available at Stockscores.com, can really give you an advantage in the market. We know what stocks to focus on, because if you apply this methodology to just any old stock, it doesn't work that well. You have to apply it to the right stocks. You need the indicators to help you see the opportunities. And again, you can learn more about that at Stockscores.com. Well, I hope that many of you will take me up on my free offer and subscribe at Stockscores.com for that weekly email newsletter. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and most importantly, trade well.